Do you guys know the name Jin Wink? Does that mean anything to you? In the world of MMA, combat, and PR, Jin Wink is top of the food chain. And I had an experience with Jin. She was the top of PR for the UFC. I was on a media tour with her. I know that sounds very arrogant, but we were out doing media. And I had just made a comment to, and I'd never been in this position. I was main eventing. It was my first time. I didn't know that there was all these extra opportunities. Kind of a whirlwind for me. But I make a comment to her about how much I would like to be on TMZ. That would really be a real tickle and a real thrill for me. My wife goes to TMZ. My mom goes to I check TMZ. I'd love to be on TMZ. When I make this comment to her, she looks up to me a little bit surprised. A little bit surprised that this was one of my goals. She says absolutely nothing. We're in a car. We get out of the car, wherever we were going, camera standing right there. First thing the guy says to me is, I'm with TMZ. Well, she hooked this up for me because I had made that comment. She got on her phone, says we're pulling over to such and such. Get him when he gets out of the car. And it was a thrill for me. I went and bragged to my now wife instantly that I was going to be on TV. And then she went and told other people. Like, it was cool. Being on TMZ was a big deal. You're in the world of MMA. I know TMZ covers MMA all the time now. They didn't used to talk about it at all. So it was a big feat, and it was a reasonable reason why this was a goal of mine. But at the same time, Jin Wink could call me for anything to this day. The answer is going to be yes before she gets it out of her mouth. And she tells me, hey, I'm now with Triller. I haven't heard you over there on YouTube or your podcast talking about the Triller event. And I said, well, Jin, I would do that for you, but you got to give me a story. I don't do resumes. I'm just not that guy. I don't do resumes. I don't do this guy's 20-0 and this guy's 12-2. It's just not what I got to have a story. She goes, Chael, you must not be paying attention. She said, first off, have you heard about the new ring? And I had, but I didn't know everything. So I want to bring this to you guys. They're doing a new platform, which is a triangular ring. Off the cusp, I hate it. I hate it because it's new and I don't like change. The other side of the coin. The apparatus very much matters. And you've heard people complain. Do you remember this? It was Matt Mitrione, and I can't remember who he fought, but they fought in a cage in the UFC in an octagon. But the UFC, which you may not know, has two different cages. One is 17 feet across, one is 26 feet across. And they actually built a smaller ring because of a venue they were playing called the Hard Rock. And the Hard Rock in Las Vegas had concrete pillars in it where they couldn't get their normal cage. So anyway, they have two-size cage. And Matt Mitrione had a huge problem with that. He had called ahead of time. He said, what cage is it? He was told it was the big cage. He gets there, it was a small cage. He says it affected his outcome. There's other people that have fought in Pride, by example, which was in a boxing ring. It had the ropes, 4 ropes on it, you know what a boxing ring is, as opposed to a cage. And they had very different outcomes. And I've heard fighters argue that the ropes favor the striker, the cage favors the grappler. Now, I don't know a damn thing about this. I can't personalize it and tell you that I know. I don't know anything about it. I've never known there was a big octagon, a small octagon. They've never shut the door. I've never thought that it mattered, but I know people do believe this. Daniel Cormier being one, Michael Bisping being one, Georges St. Pierre. I mean, meaningful fighters have talked about the apparatus. I promoted a wrestling event where we just did Olympic wrestling. We brought in Olympic wrestlers, but we put them in a cage. So the out of bounds wasn't the same rule. The sumo rule didn't exist. The way that you could sprawl and defend yourself, whereas normally you would go out of bounds or go even onto a hardwood surface like a gym floor where wrestling takes place, as opposed to you can't sprawl at all because the cage was there, and it affected the outcome. It affected the scoring. So the apparatus does matter. I can't tell you what a triangle versus a square matters, but you can't tell me either. We haven't seen it. I can tell you an open surface for defensive reasons is very different than a confined surface. So I've proven the point that we at least have an interest in this triangle. Now, whether that turns out to be cool, whether that turns out to be different, or we tease them for, we still got to let them play it out in all fairness, right, guys? So I go, well, the main event. I hear Frank Mir's in the main event, and the only thing I know about his opponent is the guy was in the ring with Anthony Joshua somewhere in the last 12 months. Must be pretty goddamn good. And she goes, well, the guy's only had 2 losses that Frank's fighting. One was to Joshua, one was Klitschko. He's won all of his other fights. Oh my goodness, I like Frank Mir. Frank's got no chance. And she goes, I don't think you know the rules. She said they are allowed to clinch. Now, bare knuckle boxing has tested this. Bare knuckle boxing also allows fighting from the clinch, what would be considered dirty boxing, illegal and against the rules, and you would be broken up. You are allowed to do in bare knuckle. So my understanding talking to Jen, and my understanding that I want to relate to you guys so that you can associate and know what you're getting into, I think it's similar to bare knuckle. And we have seen you change that one rule. You just changed the sport. Paulie lost his fight to Artem. There was no bookmaker, there was no odds, there was no buddies, there was no one aside from Artem's family that thought he had a chance in that fight. Artem beat him. Punched him up, got in the clinch. Paulie paused every time they got there thinking the ref would break it, then remembers the rules, and Artem scoring. I mean, just to share for you, change one rule, you have changed the sport. Absolutely you have. Difference between football and soccer, right? One, you're controlling the ball with your arms. The other, you're controlling it with your legs. You change one, you're changing the sport. So what does this mean? What does this mean for Frank Mir, who's a two-time MMA champion, who definitely knows how to fight out of the clinch, but is not going to do his best work under the Queensberry, taking on a master of the Queensberry who's only lost to Vladimir and Anthony Joshua, but he's never been there with an MMA guy who can clinch him before. What does it mean? And you may have the answer. You may think, this guy's going to kill Frank Mir, or Frank Mir is going to get in there and beat him. You might be right, but you might not. We've got to tune in and see. And what is the triangle about? How is that going to affect things? How is that going to change things? In all fairness, we have to give them a chance. And that chance is going to be going down this weekend. Now, if you're excited about that, and I'm sure plenty of you are, on the back end of that, which is the following week, you're going to have Jake Paul versus Fury. Anybody know what Fury's name is? Fury. Will. No, that's not right. Somebody Fury is going to be taking on Jake Paul. And I'm not looking to disrespect this young man, by the way. But Tyson is his brother. And then the old man is a very good boxer in his day, and he's a great trainer. He gets credit as a great trainer because his son is the heavyweight champion of the world. But in all fairness, this is in the family blood. Fury versus Paul is going to be a big deal. Fury's a young guy. He comes from the right training. We all know that. His record could use a little bit of help, but that's not his fault. You know, you fight who you get matched up with. I'm just sharing. I'm very open to this idea. And Jake Paul made them do a number of things. If you lose the fight, you got to change your name to Fury Fumbles for the next year. And, you know, he did the tattoo bet with Tyron Woodley, but he had more on this. He had more from a straight troll perspective that he was doing to Fury to get Fury to agree to the fight, which is brilliant in the first place. I mean, Jake Paul, who's not necessarily a boxer, well, he is now. He is now, but perception said that he wasn't a boxer. He now, within 4 fights, has the leading family of boxing, having their youngest protege begging and jumping through hoops to get on the docket with him. I mean, there's a real brilliance in everything that Paul did, but what Paul would not do is agree to VADA. VADA stands for Voluntary Anti-Doping Agency. Now, you take that however you want. And quite frankly, I don't think you're going to get a different result if Paul pees in the cup or if I pee in the cup for him. I will only share with you, nobody should do VADA. VADA should not have the doors open. It is the most ridiculous thing. Why would you ever offer to put yourself under scrutiny? That is a fool's move. Can I bring The Apprentice into it, guys? Do you remember when I did The Apprentice, when I won The Apprentice? But prior to me winning The Apprentice, I studied The Apprentice. I watched every other episode, and I watched every boardroom, and I watched every... It's a game, after all. It's a game. You got to learn the rules to the game. There was a great guy who did a great job on his project, and he did so great that he said to Trump, he said, if we lose, I'll even come into the boardroom. I'll volunteer to come into the boardroom. That's what a great job I did. Now, his entire team agreed. The team did end up losing, and Trump took him on and said, will you come in? Why don't you go ahead and come on in too? So there's 2 other people in there, and these 2 other people had just done a terrible job. And everybody had agreed they had done a terrible job, including them. They fell on their own sword. Look, we got this one wrong. It was a little out of our... Trump's going back and forth with both of them, and then he stops, and he looks at the guy in the middle, and he says, you offered to come in here. And Trump said, why would you possibly offer to put yourself in a negative position? And the guy starts fumbling. Trump says, I can't have somebody working for me that goes out of their way to set themselves up for failure. You're fired. And whenever I think of VADA And I've seen athletes go down. Was it Andre Berto went down? Now, Berto was juiced out of his mind. I don't know how he was beating the test in the first place, but he still went down to VADA. He volunteered to do it. Why would you ever volunteer to put yourself in a position that doesn't have anything positive? You don't go into VADA and it's a lottery system and they're going to give you an extra 15 grand. You don't go into VADA and you pass it and they have any level of media or credibility where they can break into SportsCenter at the top of the hour and announce to the world that you passed. You get absolutely nothing for it and you potentially get suspended if you did agree to do it. I'm only sharing this with you because I know how it looks for Paul. And I know how it looks for other people who publicly refuse to do VADA. You are still under state sanctioning. You are still under the promotion sanctioning should they want to step in and do it. There still is a testing level. You're just not volunteering to go an extra step, and only a fool would.